So let's talk about what's behind the covert operations in Venezuela, and it's Marco Rubio. But he can't do it alone, so let's talk about the Cuban American National Foundation, or CAMP, or the Cuban Lobby. So the Cuban lobby is different from AIPAC, in which AIPAC works to integrate Israel into American political life, whereas CAMP's goal is the opposite. It is to isolate Cuba and its allies from U.S. politics. Lobbies like CAMP and AIPAC are built by an elite class that turned itself into a small but mighty slice of the governing class. They move policy through lobbyists and campaign money, and a big conversation right now, especially as it relates to AIPAC, is how untouchable these groups are under campaign finance laws. Something that's not talked about enough is how the Cuban lobby is arguably the most powerful lobby in the United States. It's funded by generations of Cuban exiles, including families like Marco Rubio's who claim exile status, but they actually arrived in the United States prior to the Cuban Revolution. Regardless, this Cuban exile identity shapes his politics that he's been driving in U.S. policy towards Venezuela recently. Up until Obama, the U.S. policy toward Cuba barely changed from 1959 onward. The U.S. painted Cuba as a violent instigator in Latin America during the Cold War, while we were committing genocide in Guatemala and using scorched earth tactics in El Salvador. CAMP's mission has always been isolating Cuba politically, economically, and socially. Since the Cold War, Cuba has been used predominantly by Republicans as a political pawn. And CAMP continued to grow through generations of wealthy Cuban exiles who felt wronged by Castro. Since 1981, anti-Cuba politics have been baked into U.S. policy through donations and influence. Its founder was actually part of the Bay of Pigs Brigade, which needs to be its own video. A lot of this comes down to, though, elites who lost wealth and power to a socialist who pushed them out. Insert Kennedy assassination. But what does Venezuela have to do with the Cuban lobby? Cuba and Venezuela have built a mutually beneficial partnership that keeps both countries afloat. Venezuela sells Cuba highly subsidized oil, and Cuba sends technical staff like doctors, teachers, and instructors. Cuba then re-exports that oil, creating an economic lifeline between the two countries. Cuba has extremely high literacy rates and medical training rates, much higher than the United States, and high unemployment, which means that they have a surplus of professionals, making exit visas to Venezuela easier for Cubans. And as recently as 2024, the two countries have agreed to reinforce their strategic partnership through strengthening education systems, expanding shared research, and supporting universal healthcare, which obviously the United States vehemently hates. During the Chavez era, which the United States opposed and sanctioned since 2005, Cuba became Venezuela's security guarantor. They rebuilt Venezuela's military and provided essential security and intelligence that has helped allow the Venezuelan government to suppress dissent. This relationship helped Maduro stay in power and kept both countries from collapsing under U.S. sanctions. So basically, the United States wants to weaken Venezuela and Maduro's regime to force political leadership change, and in doing so, break the relationship between Cuba and Venezuela.